All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Kentucky Atheist. This will be added to the Grateful to Know God's broadcast after it goes off. A podcast that I put up on my channel and eventually will be in a bunch of other places once I get enough episodes. Um, Today, I've got B.S. Lewis with me, and we're going to talk about the problem of evil. A little background first. B.S. and I had this conversation over on the Shaken Fist Zach's channel, and had a little talk about it and stuff. And I was given a little pushback about the effectiveness of the problem of evil, and so I've been thinking about that a little bit. And who better to come on and discuss it than Mr. B.S. Lewis? How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I'm just happy to be on the show with the hardest hitting countdowns, intros in the business.
If we do nothing else, we got the intros down. we should just do the intro and then end it.
Right on. That'd be funny. April Fool's episode, right?
Yeah.
The most epic stream you'll ever see. Bah, 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 bah. Done.
Yeah, just have a the end.
That'd be hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway, man. And if you're not familiar with B.S. Lewis, he's linked in the description and in the title of the video, and has an awesome channel. Does a lot of animated stuff, which is one of my favorite things to watch. Reminds me a lot of Dark Matter 2525, only in you've went a different way with it, but it's the same kind of like funny stuff, and really a lot of fun. Got some videos that did really good over there too. I think you have more successful videos, air quotes, than I do, as far as like ones that took off and did really well. But
yeah, the game. It's just sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss.
Well, I'm jealous, and I'm going to hate watch you from now on.
Any watch is a good watch to me, so that's fine.
Yeah, counts towards the views all the same.
Yep. So yeah, for anybody, I don't know if you saw it or not, Joe. I finally put out a review of C.S. Lewis. 4 years in the, not the making, but 4 years waiting around. And so I figured, yeah, it's finally time to get around to that piece of crap. And I did a pretty thorough breakdown, which is getting a lot of good and bad reviews, depending who's watching it. So yeah, check it out if you haven't checked it out, everybody.
Yeah, your audio's peaking a little bit. I don't know if.
Let me try.
Okay. Shit, I don't have it on here.
What if I just whisper?
That'll work.
I can't figure out how to do it.
Yeah, you're.
Oh, here we go. Okay, I have auto gain and all that.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. I'll try to work on it.
Okay. Well, for everybody else, while BS is fixing his audio, I know today's stream was a little unexpected and stuff, but I'd made a post, a little poll thing in community tab, and BS responded to it and said, "Hey, we can talk about that anytime." And I was like, "Yeah, tell me when." And he said, "I'm free today." And I said, "Well, let's do it." And I had to move some things around, but we did the stream. You might have caught the trailer at before the video started for the Ark Encounter protest, which is July 6th in Williamstown, Kentucky. We've got lots of great speakers, lots of creators coming to meet each other and hang out and take part in a protest against many things, but the separation of church and state and the indoctrination of children with lies about the history of the universe and the earth, and dinosaurs with saddles too. Okay. I really don't like the dinosaurs with saddles. And so come join us for that. If you need any info, arkencounterprotest.com, or send me an email at the KentuckyAtheist@gmail.com, and I will answer you back as soon as I get it. We have hotel rooms reserved. There's links in the description and on the website. Pretty much anything you need to know. So we're getting ready for that. Less than a month to go. It's going to be a really, really great event, and everybody should try to make it. on the worst weekend I could have possibly picked. But anyhow,
How is this?
you're kind of quiet, but you're not cracking.
Okay. I was trying to whisper. What if I laugh really loud?
Yeah, yeah. I think they can probably hear you good now. Somebody will tell us if they can't. I can hear you.
Okay.
But so, how about we let you lay out the problem of evil, what it is, and stuff, and I'll kind of follow your lead on that. And you're more well versed in it than I am, kinda. And and we'll talk about it.
All right. Yeah. If you want to pull up my screen,
Yeah.
is it up there?
Let me use the right mouse.
So yeah, this is my formulation of it. It's the logical problem of evil rather than the evidential problem of evil. I prefer the logical. I think a lot of people prefer the logical problem of evil because it gets around uh, the disagreement and the hashing out what is evil and definitionally. You're just agreeing ontologically what evil is or omnibenevolence is. And so my premise one is God is omniscient, omnibenevolent, and omnipotent. It's the three omnis that's the specific God that the problem of evil is targeting. We have premise two, evil, definitionally being that which is contrary to God's omnibenevolent nature and will exists. I use that because we've already established in premise one that God is all good, so therefore He is the standard. It's the same standard that's used in the moral argument for God. So therefore, anything that's contrary to God as the moral standard is evil. Premise three, due to God's omnibenevolent nature, it would be impossible for evil to exist prior to creation and a reality of God alone. So before God created the earth, the heavens, the devil, angels, demons, anything, he was already in a perfect state. And him creating uh, or evil existing prior to creation would be a logical impossibility because he is by definition omnibenevolent. Essentially, it's like saying that if you have the perfect piece of cheesecake, you're going to make it only worse by actually putting dirt or putting anything on it, because anything else you add to the perfect piece of cheesecake will definitionally take away from its perfectness, because it's already in a state of perfection. Conclusion, through the act of evil or the act of creation, evil entered reality. He was either unaware, didn't care, or unable to prevent evil, which attacks the three omnis.
Right. So I'm gonna go to the first thing that stuck out to me is whenever we define that which is contrary to God's omnibenevolent nature and will. Um, what what is God's omnibenevolent nature?
And this is what most people have a problem with, is the definition of evil, which is what I'm trying to get around by formulating this way. So the it doesn't really matter what omnibenevolence is, like what entails. Like you could have genociding folks being omnibenevolent.
Yeah.
Not genociding folks would be benevolent, or would be would be evil. I mean, and so when we're talking about specific examples, this is what's called a definitional uh, contradiction, which is one of the strongest contradictions you can get in logic. It's why we say a squared circle can't exist,
Right.
because a square is four sides and a circle is no sides, or a triangle is three sides. Like you can't have a squared triangle, can't have a squared circle, because definitionally they just they don't
Well,
jive.
let me lay out, and I'm just doing. Look, BS. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm doing this to so we can make this better. Okay.
Okay.
If we can, So and understand, I agree. The problem of evil is a problem, and it's of evil. But so I would say that uh, premise one would be God is omnibenevolent. Premise two, um, since how to put that? um, God created evil, uh, therefore evil is part of God's omnibenevolent nature.
And this speaks to your post you put up earlier, because that's kind of the logical contradiction here. Is that if God is omnibenevolent, his nature limits him to doing half of what is possible
Right.
because he can't do evil because of his nature. So
Yeah.
he's not omnipotent. And if he can, then his nature isn't all good, and you're going to attack the first premise.
Yeah.
The the
Yeah.
the
Right.
the premise three is just kind of to try to tidy up some of these holes that people try to skirt out, and usually has to do with the creation story. Like it's up to men. It's the free will of men that gets the people in trouble. It's like no, if you believe in Aquinas's first cause arguments, the unmoved mover and such, that doesn't just apply to cosmology. That applies to morality as well. So you can say secondary causes all you want with free will, yada yada yada, but you're not escaping the actual finality that God is the uncaused cause of evil.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's just and I think that the reason that I bring that up though is just because whenever we discuss this with apologists who the very few of them who can understand you know what a syllogism is and how it works. Um,
Yeah,
that I think that that's where they push back is because when you talk about what God's nature is, how do you know God's nature other than the one source that tells God's nature, which says God is all good and He is the creator of evil? So I think that they make the argument that that evil was created for an ultimate good.
which is just an assumption, right?
Right, right. It's
But
them pretending to know God's nature as well.
mhm. And but even in the first premise, if we're saying he's omnibenevolent, we're pretending to know his nature there too, right? That's why it's not so
Well,
much about
that's
the epistemology; it's about the ontology. We're just claiming it to be true.
right. But the source of that claim is the Bible.
That is up for debate.
Right,
Because
right,
God,
right.
Isaiah 45:7 or whatever the verse is, like God created evil kind of thing. And there's a lot of stuff that, can raise an eyebrow in the
Yeah.
Bible that would question
People
that.
say that God is all good, but God doesn't act in a way consistent with that.
Yeah. But the
Yeah,
good thing is, like, this isn't just an argument against the Christian God. You can argue it against a Muslim God. Well, you had an interesting post response today from a Muslim
yeah,
who did say that I'm just going to drop the omnibenevolent because God is testing us, and I want to assume that he's omnibenevolent, but I'm not going to jump to that conclusion.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's
he,
why I didn't push back. I was like, "You want to come talk about it," and that way, just save it for that instead of arguing with him.
yeah, I think Muslims get this, and that's why they've dropped the Muslim God is a lot like the Calvinist God in the sense that he's just suck it up, Buttercup. That's what God does.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
and in a sense, my conversation with a Muslim about that is going to be me pivoting to a different thing of why should we trust your source for those things. That's really how I would argue against that. But also, I'm not as familiar with Islam as Christianity, obviously.
yeah, and but the overarching point I'm stressing is not just a Christian argument. It's not just a Muslim argument. The person who actually kind of came up with the problem of evil is addressing the philosophers' God of the Greeks.
Yeah,
So the original formulation wasn't against the Christian God; it was against another nebulous type of omni being that the Greek philosophers believed in.
yeah.
So it kind of it transpires and traverses multiple religions and genres.
So, what stepping down a step from the apologists who understand syllogisms to the ones that may not understand syllogisms? The what about this is God says that He created evil, or it's said in the Bible that God created evil. Why is it that that can't be part of God's ultimately good plan?
Well, I guess we that's where we have to define good. If you
Yeah,
just mean good is God, then God is God, and it's just
right.
divine command theory. Uh, we're gonna erase evil at that point, and we're gonna get rid of premise two because God is doing things that if he's doing evil to produce good, how can we trust that that good is actually going to be good?
Yeah.
You know, he might be doing evil just to produce evil. I'm trying to work on the volume, people. I don't know how to do it in EV Mux.
I've got you turned all the way up here. Uh, uh, I can't. Let me see. I can't do.
Because I see the in the audio, I see it's a meter of my microphone playing, but I can't see like a slide to actually turn it up or turn it down.
If you go down to the bottom of that, it should have like auto adjust mic volume, and if you uncheck that, it'll pop up and give you the slider. I
That's
don't know if
not.
yours has that. I have that on my end. I can lower my volume so everybody can turn it up and hear both of us. That'll work. Uh,
Yeah.
let's see.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's echo cancellation's off, auto gain's off, background noise is off, and stereo audio
you got to
input
hit a
is
C
off.
for us, okay? Uh,
Yeah.
ah!
That's my high C.
Yeah. Are we both closer to the same volume now, guys? Uh,
I'll try to yell. I will try to yell, folks.
well, no, I lowered mine. They said it's not too bad. I can lower mine a little bit more. Let's see. Let's go a little
All
bit
right.
more. That should
Yeah.
be pretty close then.
Yeah, if anybody wants me on their show, this is what you can expect. The epicenter of professionalism coming
I,
over here.
I think you did this just to run the professional game that we run around here, BS, because we don't do this shit here. All right, we're ready,
Yeah.
and we're always professional, and we don't
Yeah.
say fuck, and
I'm sabotaging you with the problem of audio.
the problem of audio. I'm gonna have to change the name of it after this.
So let's dig into like the side tangent that I know that you're interested in is the problem of deception.
Right.
So the problem of deception attacks all these premises. It kind of mainly focuses on one and two. And the problem of deception is how would you recognize good from evil in the first place? You know, if it was the standard like God. If God shows up to you right now and he says, or if Satan showed up to you and said, "I'm God," how would you tell the difference between him and God?
Right, and I think that's the problem is that as simple meat bags of blood, we're not equipped to do that.
No, and which brings in a big problem for Christianity if all of it hinges on your belief. Because everybody says it's what Jesus did on the cross. It's what Jesus did on the cross, but it's not. It's what you believe Jesus did on the cross is what's going to save you or not. And if logically, the only way to tell the difference between any of the omnis, so if a being shows up to you and says, "I'm omniscient, I know everything," the only way for you to fact check him is for you yourself to be omniscient.
Yeah.
So that would also apply to omnibenevolent. Unless you actually have the inner morality of perfect goodness within you, you can't accurately determine if this being making a claim to you is evil.
Right, and the thing I always refer to, and that's if we're giving all this exists, is that in the Bible it talks about how Satan can masquerade as an angel of light and that he can deceive even the elect. And so, how are we to determine whether it's an angel of light or whether it's Satan masquerading as an angel of light? And the Bible says that we can't.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and
And
that's
so,
kind of the basement of my argument with it.
yeah, and but what we can do with Christianity is use its own claims as an internal critique. And so, if Jesus himself says you can tell a good tree by the good fruit it bears and a bad tree by the bad, that kind of throws out the window the greater goods arguments, right?
Yeah,
Because if good things are producing bad events only to lead to greater good events, we can reject it based on its providing bad events
yeah.
through an internal critique.
Right, and when we again back to the biblical angle of it too, that supports that is whenever it talks about that with Satan, but it doesn't say when God created deception. And it seems that if you go back and read Genesis, that deception was built in from creation. And then I think that's also where it gets into this. Also, connect the problem of deception anyway connects to the problem of evil, but it changes it quite a bit, and it also connects to divine hiddenness. And we get into, well, why would this God, this triomni God, create deception in the first place? And then one of the first things that happens is he allows Adam and Eve to be deceived, and then violates all the Tromney things that he's supposed to be. Um, so I think that's why I like the problem of deception so much, is because I think depending on how you argue it, you can connect it to these other well-known problems with the claims of the Christian God, or
Yeah,
any God for that matter.
yeah, I agree because I think the problem of deception is something that most everybody agrees about, that we are not perfect as humans. That's not a religious claim. Even non-religious people kind of go ahead and say that. But in the religious sense, if they're it's attacking the fact that God made us to be not perfect humans.
Yeah,
And there's certain times where it'd be like, well, you need lies to exist to have truth, because it's like that crooked line, straight line stuff with C.S. Lewis. But that's not the case. All you need is falsehoods. You don't need actual internal deception for truth to exist. And in a way, if I'm thinking, like, if I created a being and I was trying to get around the problem of deception, one way I would make it is so they have like an internal gut feeling that if I told you a lie, Joe, if I told you a falsehood,
you better not.
like, yeah, you would actually be able to feel it within you and be like, be able to recognize that I told you a falsehood, like maybe a a slight vomity feel or something, like a disgust or something, like, no, he told me the thing, and it wouldn't mean that you would actually know the truth. It would just mean that you were programmed in your biology to recognize a falsehood.
Right.
So it's not like, oh, deception needs to exist in this view. It's just people lack imagination when they're trying to make defenses for their god in this sense.
Well, and I think also whenever we get into talking about the moral implications of it, that it's a problem for that too, because they talk about, well, God is all good and objective morality and all that, but then it's like, well, God contradicts that by also creating evil, and God so God is all good and all evil.
Which is a contradiction in why he doesn't exist.
Right.
you know, you
Right,
can't.
which is a problem.
Yeah, you can't have both.
Yeah.
Just believe in the pagan pantheons, the Greeks, the Norse, whatever, like, because they are more logically acceptable than the triomni.
Never mind Henry the horse back there. He's
Yeah. Well, like, at least with polytheism, you can sit there and say, like, Zeus has his own personality and Ares has his own personality, and they come to clash as two different entities or beings, but you don't have that same duality within one being who's like wrestling with himself in like a divine psychological conundrum or something.
yeah. Yeah, and this is one of those things where it's like n- not so much with apologists, because they're going to, I mean, ultimately they're going to be dishonest about this whole thing, or not understand it most of the time. Of course, there's other options, but um, whenever you're talking about the actual believers and stuff, you confront them with this, and they have no idea what you're talking about, because most of them have never thought about, the Bible, or the the God and the qualities of that God, because indoctrination requires that you don't take a critical look at the thing you're being told. And that's what I find whenever I talk to like people I know and stuff about these things. They'll be like, "Yeah, I didn't read that in the Bible. Where's that at?" And I'm like, "It's right here." And they're like, "Oh, I never knew that." And I'm like, "Yeah, they don't. They only teach you the good parts."
Yeah, it's it's covering up one eye. Like, the free will defense too is kind of ridiculous, and it just bugs me because that's the go-to for everybody when it comes to this, every Christian when it comes to this thing. But even biblically, it says before they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden, they had the choice to eat from every other tree that was good for fruit. And so that's showing you that free will choice is already existence before evil was on the scene in the Christian narrative.
Yeah.
Like, so if that tree just wouldn't have been there, free will choice would have still been there, regardless of evil being on the scene or not.
But then the rest of the Bible contradicts free will. I think
Yeah.
even the resurrection contradicts free will.
Well, yeah, but we have to focus on the original story because that's their explanation for why
Yeah.
evil exists in the first place.
Right, right. Yeah.
Everything else is they're just going to say is the remnant trails of the
The
bad
fall.
decisions that
Yeah.
Eve made or Adam and Eve made. Like, but if you look at the actual decisions that were up on the table in the garden, the tree didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
The tree being there is proof that the uncaused cause is God because Adam and Eve didn't make that tree grow.
Right, right. If and that's the weird thing about this. If you have an all powerful, all knowing God, forget the omnibenevolence for just a second. But if you have those things, why even go through the practice of doing the whole garden thing and the tree and all that? Just go ahead and start where you want to start. I mean, like the uh, and even in Genesis, I mean nearly every major event in the Bible contradicts free will because of God's involvement. Because whenever you argue with an apologist and you say, like, you talk about divine hiddenness or why can't God reveal himself or something like that, and they say, well, that would take away free will. But all throughout the Bible, God intervenes in the natural world over and over and over and over, and intervenes with people's free will. Like the resurrection, it says that died for people's sins, and it wasn't just that original sin. It was for people's all their sins, and
Yeah.
um, that's a problem because maybe I want my sins. Maybe I want to go to hell. If I have free will, I have that choice, right?
Yeah, that would be one of your choices. That would
Yeah,
be the ultimate choice that
right. And
Christians
and,
think.
and so God takes that away through the resurrection. Even the flood takes away free will. The Exodus definitely takes away free will.
Yeah,
It's just filled with that, and that's what the Bible does, though, right? Like that's why these things are such a problem because it all derives back down to the Bible is a collection of books that all contradict each other, pretty much.
which all of us atheists and most non-Christians see, but they just can't see that. They're stuck on it's
Oh,
one
right.
book that all points to Jesus.
Yeah, they can't even fathom that that's a possibility. And that's really like that's the frustrating thing for me and why I prefer to have conversations with atheists is because when I have conversations with Christians, I know that they're not even considering anything I say because they can't. Because in order to consider anything that I say, they have to listen to the devil, because that's me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
so
the video I put out with C.S. Lewis yesterday, one of the sections is liar, lunatic, and Lord, which is all about identifying Jesus, right? Or identifying evil or God or whatever you want to say in the first place. C.S. Lewis's argument for it is just it's obvious. He's not Jesus is not a good moral teacher because some of this shit he said was whack. So unless he is God, he couldn't get away with saying that stuff. But he also could be the devil. And then he just drops the subject and he just moves on. It's like, well, let's experiment. Let's flesh out your other hypothesis that he could be the devil. C.S. Lewis, why you just dropping that part off, dude?
yeah, I mean, and that was one of my favorite parts about the problem of deception is that we could actually argue that the way it's laid out that you can't convince me that Yahweh isn't the devil really in the way it's defined, or that the Bible isn't just a deception written by Satan. Um, and both of those things come up, and so
Well, I even got a guy who's Christian who's arguing with me in the comments now, and he's like, "It's just obvious. It's just obvious." I'm like, and I laid it out to him. I was like, "Okay, imagine this scenario. Jesus is Satan. He was sent by God to not free the world and save the world, but he was sent to test the faith and fidelity of the Jews. And anybody who left the Jewish faith to become this Christian failed the test. It's the same thing that happened to Job, right? It's the
Yeah.
exact same story as Job." And he's like, "That never happened in Job." And then I pointed out Job chapter 2, verse 3, where God says to Satan, he says, "You have incited me to ruin Job's life for no reason." So that one sentence in Job says that it was Satan's will with God's power that caused ruin to Job. And we all know it's for a bet, but um, to imagine, like, we have precedents in this situation. We have precedents in the story of Job that God is capable and has done this before. Why would we not extend the same possibility to Jesus? There's
Yeah.
nothing logically problematic with that at all.
Right. Right. Yeah. The that's what the Muslim guy threw up too, was the Job thing.
Yeah, and it's a good point. Like, if Job wasn't in the Bible, they'd have a much easier time arguing their point. But because of the proposition that me and that Muslim guy brought up, every writer of the New Testament is now suspect. You can't take all the New Testament for uh, scripture, for holy, divine, inspired word or whatever, because they're all deceived by Jesus as well. So
Right.
you're getting a whole testament of people who are arguing one side of an argument, but ontologically they're on the wrong side of the argument because we've already made the decision that Jesus is Satan. There's no epistemology that's going to get you to anything else because we've already determined it from the get go, just like they determined God or Jesus is God from the get go.
Right. Right. Yeah. They have to do that though. There's not a it's that's the whole reason. Like the Trinity isn't anything biblical. That's why, is because they have to do that shit in order to reconcile all the stupid things that happen.
And this is why I think they have such a problem with science, because science is an epistemology, it's not an ontology, and they can't get past the well, Darwin said, well, Darwin said this. It's like, well, Darwin was laying out an epistemology. He was laying a hypothesis that further got fleshed out by the epistemology to provide a confident theory, which is kind of ass backwards from the way a lot of these apologetic mindsets and arguments work.
Right. I I pinned your C.S. Lewis video in the top of the chat for anybody that wants to go check it out. I've got it pinned up there. Go watch it, like it, subscribe, and all that crap. If you're not, I think probably about everybody is here, but in case somebody watches it later and wants to check it out, it'll still be there then too.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm actually pretty proud of this work. It's not just off entirely funny fluff piece, even though there are funny parts. I actually had to do some research for this one, so
Yeah, no, and I've kind of relied on your research and some from Jimmy Tux and a number of people for me to have a better understanding of these things. And I still think that, like, I think the problem. It's not that I think the problem of evil isn't good. It's that I think that I think that it's good logically, and it works well and all those things. I think the problem is whenever it comes to the apologist, it's one of those that, even though they squirm out of it in a way that usually contradicts the first premise, they um, they do it in a way that sorry, keeps their flock on their side. Like, I think it's not bad, but I think it's effective, but it's more effective with other arguments. That's what I need to say.
uh, I,
Sorry,
I
it took me a minute.
I understand. I think it's effective for those who aren't already, drinking the Kool Aid on it. Like,
Yeah.
if you're making honest intellectual considerations, and like maybe you do believe supernatural and theism is a thing, but you're like shopping around for which religion's the true one. This argument will probably sway you because you're not already bought into the omni-god concept. And so, like, you'll look at it, and if you understand the actual logical problems that it entails, you'll realize that you don't have a winning path any way you choose. I got it brought up to me that from Eurovic, the guy we talked to the other day on a mod stream or somebody or my stream, he was saying I actually made a trilemma out of this argument, which I was happy to hear. I was like, "Yay, I have my own trilemma now! Yay!" But you're screwed no matter which way you take it. My conclusion isn't actually true. My conclusion assumes that you're dropping off premise one, but the conclusion changes for each of the premises you actually drop out. So the way the argument's structured is you have to at least drop one, and that'll change your conclusion on the argument. So I didn't realize that until he brought it to my attention. But I made a trap, essentially. I made a good trap, and I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that, like, especially depending on the conversation you're having, because I noticed that with apologetics, and I think it's part of the what I call the dishonesty of it, even if they're not purposely being dishonest, um, because a lot of their arguments will allow for the problem. Well, won't allow for it, but won't they? They contradict their arguments against the problem of evil or against, um, deception or whatever. And then whenever you go and make that argument, then they have to make a different argument that contradicts their earlier argument, and
yeah,
that's what I like to do to them, because I'm like, oh wait, whenever we talked about this other thing, you said it was this. Now it's this. Why the difference? How did we get there?
yeah.
And
In a good conversation with them, it'll be like you'll have them chasing their tail like a dog,
yeah, yeah,
because
exactly.
they'll
Good metaphor.
they'll end up dropping premise one, and then you point out the problem with dropping premise one. Then they drop premise two, and then you probably point out the problem with premise two, and then they drop premise three, and they'll just keep circling around, not realizing that this is a, as the precepts would call it, a vicious circular argument. Like, but they don't care.
So I'll give you something that I've been kind of thinking about, and that I think is and it may not be a good argument. It may just be like, you know, uh, maybe the gene pool is too tight in Kentucky, and I'm not understanding. But whenever we talk about a being that's omniscient, how can an omniscient being even have agency?
Could you flesh it out for me so I understand
So,
what you're saying?
so it would seem to me that an all powerful, all knowing being, would there are no choices to be made. There
Yeah,
is
yeah.
nothing to do.
So, yep, you are getting on I think we talked about this earlier. The philosophical problem if God has free will.
Yeah,
And if God doesn't have free will, he's not an agent, he's not a being, he's not a trinity, he's not three persons in one being, and it kind of derodes what we classify and define him as in the first place. You're nailing it. You're nailing it, Joe.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's something that I've been thinking about and kind of working on a little bit. And I mean, there's not really any information out there for that. I just kind of got to think about it and read, some
It would be
stuff. But
the deep philosophical debates. There have been a number of them, but it's essentially focusing on what it means to have a nature, because we're talking about God's omnibenevolent nature. And if you ask a Christian, can you go against your sin nature? And they'll say, no, it's in your nature. You can't go against your sin nature. And so it would be the same in God's instance. He has an all good nature. He couldn't go against his all good nature without an external force helping him, like the Holy Spirit, which is what helps you go against your sin nature in a Christian framework.
right.
God needs a God, essentially, if you're looking at
Well,
this.
right, because you get into, like, a lot of times they'll try to reduce arguments down to solipsism, but it's almost like the God version of solipsism. And if you if you allow for a God to be the one that puts your brain in a jar,
Yeah, solipsism and a omni god are the same argument.
right,
One's just external, and one's internal. And so
right,
I bring that up in my recent video too. Is that I make some jokes about it. Like, there's no way you can prove a god any more than you can prove that you're not God.
yeah, yeah, right, right. There, I mean, it's an unfalsifiable position, so you got. there's not really anything you can say about it. It's the same as if I woke up today and said that the world was ran by Freddy Krueger. Uh,
Well, yeah. But that's what's beautiful about the Jesus story is you're supposed to try to identify him as God, but you can actually apply that to yourself as well. And any story that an apologist can tell you why he actually is God, you can just use on yourself or any other number of people to make them God as well.
yeah,
Because
yeah, right.
there's no way to classify, there's no way to falsify the claim because both of them are deeply, deeply unfalsifiable claims.
Yeah. Uh, I want to say hi to Missing Mod real quick. Missing Mod, if you watch my last recorded video I put out, it's about 8 minutes long. I used one of your things that you sent me as the intro. So thank you for that. And I know it took me a while to get around to using it, but I needed something, a real quick intro for it. So I used that. So thank you for that, Missing Mod. And how are you? But
Missing Mod sucks.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just joking, Missing Mod.
Uh, Well, you start acting up, Missing Mod, and I'll make BS read all your comments.
I'm your big ost fun.
So this, yeah. So for me, I think that if we go back, like even if that point that I was trying to make about the omniscience and agency, even if that doesn't hold on its own, it's like it's still like, well, you can't really account for that. And then we get into this problem of evil thing. You can't really account for that. You definitely can't account for the problem of deception. There's no way. And it's like, okay, that doesn't prove your God doesn't exist because again, it's an unfalsifiable proposition, but it does explain like why, as atheists, at least for some atheists, why we would be skeptical of the claim. And
Yeah, it's not just as easy as looking at a tree.
right,
Like,
yeah,
look at the
Tr-
fucking trees.
trees isn't here, is he? But yeah, yeah, it's one of those things, and that's what it usually resorts to is, well, look at this thing, and then they get into these designers, and the arguments start getting worse and worse after that, right? So you've knocked down the big ones, and then you get to fine tuning and the Kalam and the trees
Can you
and
can you highlight Missing Mod's last statement?
sure,
Just to embarrass the shit out of her.
and and eventually you get down to objective morality, which is their worst argument.
Yeah, they're all bad. They're all bad.
Well,
So
Missing Mod, let's talk about your sex life since you want to put it out there. I mean, what position was it?
missionary, I'm sure.
Of course.
So, all right, let's jump to the next part of this is faith.
Yeah.
What does it even mean to have faith in an unfalsifiable concept? Is it even possible to have faith in an unfalsifiable concept if you can't define it properly to actually believe in it in the first place?
Oh, right. I think the whole idea of faith is problematic. Like it doesn't, even whenever you give the right definition, that's not the thing that they're doing. It's more culty than that.
Yeah, I got TMM, the Messianic. Uh, what's the hell? The maniacal messianic or something. TMM, he goes for short. He turned me on to igtheism a long time ago. Basically, he can't believe in God because there's not a proper definition or concept to believe in, and
Right.
so, and I think the problem of evil, especially with that type of God, really hammers this home. Like, what am I even believing in? Like, can I even believe in something if I can't accurately tell you what I believe in the first place?
Yeah.
With it not making any logical sense to you? How can I be logical to believe in a thing? It's like believing that squared circles exist when you know, like logically, it's a contradiction in your mind.
Yeah.
It might be able to exist in a conceptual form because there are illogical things that do exist in the abstract. Like the Devil's Pitchfork is a famous 2D drawing of a pitchfork that's impossible to replicate in real life. But it's only abstract. It's an abstract
Right.
concept. And if they're willing to sit there and say, well, "I believe in an abstract concept called God," Woohoo, good for you. Who fucking cares? Like, you're trying to tell me this God created everything that's real and existing, but it's an abstract concept. How does that work? Tell me the mechanism.
Yeah. And that's one of the things like that I try to express. It's like, okay, we have all of these problems here, and that doesn't prevent you from believing whatever it is you want to believe, but at some point, like if you end up in a position to where you have to reconcile these things, you have to confront what it is that you believe, and then like it's shattering your whole air quotes worldview, like and then all of that was like for nothing when it's always been out there in front of you the whole time. Like you just had to think critically about it. And again, like I understand indoctrination is a thing and kind of prevents that, but I just feel like that whenever people struggle with deconstruction, that the thing that we're talking about is why that ends up being so difficult is because you end up having to confront these things. You realize all the things that you've done in your life, all the ways that all the perspectives that you had about other people and things, and then you're forced to reconcile those things or lie to yourself and say that you keep believing, which I think is also common. But
Yeah.
you know,
It forces you to live in cognitive dissonance.
right.
And the Russian or the Eastern Orthodox Church, they actually will brag about like we embrace paradox. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, you embrace paradox, great for you. Like, you're gladly living in cognitive dissonance. You want me to applaud for you? I don't get it. Like, there's a good reason why we don't have arguments all the time on what a tree is, because we can all point to a tree and grunt and say, yeah, tree. We can sit
Yeah.
there but you can't do that with these abstract concepts. So anything that's in the abstract realm, you're going to have endless fighting over, because there's no objective grounding to point at it and just say, God, you know?
And also, like God created everything. Is it only the actions of people that can be evil? Can other things that God created be evil, like actual physical objects?
Devil, does he count? He's humanoid, I assume.
Yeah.
But anything that has agency, which brings us back to what you brought up earlier, does God even have agency? Could he
Right.
have not? Could he have not created evil? Who knows? Like,
Right.
which,
Well, if and I mean, I guess it kind of gets into some of the arguments where they say God is everything, and uh, so God, if God is good and evil, and God is all these other things, and God is in everything and all that, then God is really in nothing because you have no way to differentiate between what is and isn't God.
that's my
Um,
argument for why there's not a creator. They don't have
right,
something to point to say this isn't a created thing. Even
right,
the irreducible complexity, like, oh, look at the DNA and how exquisite and complicated it is, but then you point to the most simplest molecule, like a hydrogen atom, still created. So irreducible complexity has nothing to do with the argument, because the most simplest thing and the most complex thing will both be created in their mind.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Um,
Whereas we, as an atheist or naturalist, or what, we have different standards, because we're saying a created thing is created by a mind, which could be us as humans, but it could be birds making nests or beavers making dams. It could be. It's not just limited to us as human beings, but I can look at a cave and say that it doesn't need a cave maker, you
of
know.
course, yeah.
But they can't. They have to say, well, a cave needs a cave maker, a watch needs a watchmaker, an ocean needs an ocean maker, blah 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 blah.
Oh, right, yeah, and yeah. So with that argument, it's always like, well, that paintings have a painter and buildings have a builder, and I'm like, so do trees have a treer?
Yeah,
Like
they're
what?
stealing from our worldview.
Yeah, like what are we saying here? It's it's that for me though, and I get like a lot of other people are convinced for these things, but it's I guess where I've just heard it so many times and stuff. When they start this stuff, like I'm like, are you serious? Is this what we're gonna do? Like, Is this really where we're going to go with this argument that, you know, like Frank Turek has made 20 years ago, and AIG has made, and all these people have been making for years and years and years, that have been debunked over and over and over, or at least shown not to be logically consistent with reality. You know, and that doesn't comport with reality isn't true. So like, and you know, so and I know we're supposed to be talking about the problem of evil, but then
They
you
all
get
intersect.
into like the objective morality thing, which is the go-to argument for so many apologists. And I feel like that is the worst argument they have. I feel like that's the biggest losing argument they could make. Um, other than young Earth creationism's 1,000 year thing. Uh,
Yeah.
other
So
than everything Ken Owen ever said.
yes, the moral argument relies on the assumption that objective morals exist, and the only way to prove objective morals exist is to prove their God exists. So it's basically putting the cart before the horse. Like you could actually formulate the moral argument in reverse. God
Yeah,
exists, therefore objective morals exist. You know, but that's what they actually mean because they're running it backwards. They're running from their conclusion to their start.
always.
But I did a section in the C.S. Lewis video I'm talking about again that uh, you can't tell the difference between a crooked line and a straight line because C.S. Lewis couldn't even tell the difference between if Jesus was the devil or God. He couldn't. And there's also a section where he's talking about animal suffering. He can't tell if an animal is really in pain or not because he has this belief because of the problem of evil that animals don't feel pain.
Right.
And so like that's this is what we should focus on as the dangers of these problem of evil type of arguments. If it's taken reverse, it leads you to believe such absurd things like animals can't feel pain, which is a purely philosophical argument. It's not a scientific or an observational argument that CS comes to conclusion on. It's because he can't square the circle on his cognitive dissonance between the doctrines and dogmas of his religion and what is actually noticed and observed in natural reality.
Right.
So natural reality loses. God is always right. Animals don't feel pain, and it's like now we're talking about psychology where people like who often grow into psychopaths have a history of childhood animal mutilation and a lack of empathy towards animals that carries over to humanity because they start with animals and they become people who serial killer and murder people, and all because like this problem of evil and this Christianity doctrines and dogmas have kind of rotted their brain in a sense to call a crooked line a straight line.
Oh, of course, yeah, yeah, and it's so. Do you think like because I don't remember ever having like thing like facts that I could go and verify. I don't remember ever having those presented to me and me not, you know, like questioning the claims made by religion because of it. And I mean, I was a young Earth creationist, so I believed a lot of stupid shit. But like,
Same.
do you think that for the ones who remain in that cognitive dissonance, do you think that they are unwilling to look at it because it may challenge it, or do you think that they are not capable, or that they're just like just being dishonest and I'm gonna say what I gotta say because that's what they tell me to do?
Indoctrination is a bitch.
Yeah, yeah, it
Because
is.
I will say, from my own experience, I didn't even ever even think of the possibility that God never could exist until I was well into adulthood. Like it wouldn't even occur to me, and especially since I was growing up in the church. Um, there's also a lot of don't listen to people if they are preaching stuff that's against our interpretation of the Bible. So when you go to that evolutionary classroom and they tell you like all this stuff about old Earth and stuff, you're gonna you're gonna have a problem with it. And it's not something like I'm willing. I'm like it's just you don't know any better, and you're very emotionally convicted to love Jesus and stay in touch with what you quote unquote think is the truth.
Yeah,
I don't think it's always malicious or malevolent. I don't think it's mean in nature. I don't think it's like doing this because they think they're doing what's right. And this is why I try to handle some with kid gloves, and I don't just go off and like attack every fucking Christian I see, because a lot of them are like the Matrix people. you know, they don't know any better. They think you're upending what reality is by even offering some of these ideas up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't. And I had a Christian. I don't know if they were an apologist. I mean, I guess. Well, I'll just tell you what they said. Shut up, Joe, and say it. The They said that what I was doing is because Satan was making me do it, and um, does Satan have the ability to take away free will?
Yeah, what about my free will, bro?
Yeah,
uh, which is weird because they also believe like demonic possessions and stuff like that, which is a definite violation of free will. If a being is taking over your body and making you crawl on the walls and spit vomit everywhere, but
yeah. Sumami, you win the award for the comment of the day. Don't fuck with my crows, or I will fight you. Perfect.
well, see, mommy, they don't feel any pain, so don't worry about it.
Sumami's our crazy bird lady. I'm just joking. I love you, Sumami, and your birds. Um,
Yeah.
but
So, have I convinced you since our last talk that it should be considered a little more important to recognize the problem of evil?
Well, yes, and but see, here I think really because like I'm kind of dumb. I didn't really
You're not
express.
dumb, dude. You
Well,
understand a
I
lot more than
kinda not. I'm not completely dumb, but a little bit. Like I know things, I remember things, but whenever I try to think on the spot, like I'm not very good at that, and I stumble over my words and say shit wrong and all that. But like,
you brought up the free will part of it without us even talking about it in that talk. So you were obviously able to connect A to B to C, like
yeah.
logically, without us even just addressing it in the last talk we had.
Well, I think the problem of evil is great, and that it is a huge problem. But maybe it's more my issue with it is whenever I try to make that argument, I struggle with it. But talks like this are what help me to do that better, and hopefully that's what we're doing with the audience here, the ones that are listening to us.
Yeah, and I don't think you're critiquing me as if I'm wrong, because any philosopher who is interested in philosophy is interested in having their syllogisms like refined into a better proposition that it can't be fought against as easily. So I know that there's loose wording in my conclusion, and Urovic brought up that it's not even a conclusion; it's a trilemma, and so that stuff I appreciate because I can be like, well, the trilemma is still valuable, even though it's not a classical syllogism, but an inductive syllogism.
Right.
But yeah, I welcome the thing. I just think that there is something there at the at the core of it. There is a nugget of, oh fuck, you guys are fucked, omnibenevolent God believers. like
Yeah.
this shit's fucking got you in trouble, and it's just a matter of forming it into the best way that it makes it most effective.
But I guess also whenever I talk about what's effective with apologists, nothing's really effective, is it? Because no matter how much you contradict their position or how much you show that it's not even possible, they continue to make the same argument and just ignore what you said and go on.
And that's fine. But let's sit there and constantly remind them that they're not being logical in their assertions.
Well, that's why whenever I ask to speak to apologists, I'm always like, well, come and speak to me on video, or at least do it somewhere where I can record it, because it's not valuable for me to just talk to them. I already know how it's going to turn out.
Don't.
But
That's not a good approach. Uh,
I mean, I just want to do it for other people, in front of other people,
no, no,
though.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
Not every one of us, but the majority of us in the atheism YouTube space are deconverts. Something clicked with us. somebody had a conversation. We listened to somebody that changed our minds. So it's not impossible. You just never know who it's going to happen to.
Yeah. Welcome, Rainbow Ash. It's your first time here. Here, we'll do this thing that worked earlier and see. We'll celebrate you coming for the first time. Here you go. They need to make it shorter.
Yahoo!
Yeah. Woo! Now let's get drunk.
Too late.
But but yeah, welcome, and I'm glad to see you. And if you are new here, thanks for coming and thanks for subscribing because I know you did if you're in the chat. You know what happens though when I turn on subscribers only? If I make it instant, I'll gain like 4 or 5 subscribers during the stream, and then when the stream ends, I'll lose them all. Isn't
Unless
that?
they forget. And then you're like, hopefully they forget.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they'll just forget to unsubscribe until my next video pops up and it's me on here cussing about something stupid. And then they're like, why am I subscribed to this shit? Um, but yeah, welcome. Uh, the I mean, I think that so and I guess I feel that way because whenever I try to have these conversations in private, they end up going on for like 5 or 6 hours or 2 days or whatever, like trying to just get past simple things, and it's like uh, uh, and it always devolves into worse and worse things, and so it's like if I have that conversation in private, then there's no way I can have it again publicly because then we're already stuck at the beginning on where they start at, and they know that's where I'm gonna hold them up. But
Yeah.
um, just
My
for
be-
the yeah, go ahead.
my best inkling of what a thought I could have on that is it's best to define terms right up front.
No,
That's
I agree.
that's why I tried to like be specific in my argument I made, and usually we'll end up fighting about a premise too. What does evil mean? It's like you guys are the one who's proposing it to me. What do you think evil means? You've already told me in the moral argument for God that He is the standard according to His nature. I'm using that definition. You know,
Yeah,
I'm using the definition I get from Frank Turek and William Lane Craig and every Christian apologist around the block. That is my definition for evil. Like anything against his nature is evil, and then they still want to find ways to fight around it. But my point is like because it is a inherently illogical concept of an omni whatever God, you're gonna end up winning that argument
yeah,
because there's no way to lose that argument because you're already on the winning side of logic.
right, right. Yeah, that's the thing that I'm like we're because and especially if they give a syllogism, it's like okay, well premise 1 or 2 is usually where it's like, no, that doesn't work. That's not true, and that doesn't follow. And like you're just inserting stupid stuff like the mini worlds shit and all that stuff. Like
Yeah, simulation. Yeah.
yeah, the I think that I think though about the definitions, I think you're right, and I think that with the connecting these arguments too, like a lot of atheists who interact with Christians on the internet will not even deal with presuppositionalists or will just shut them down real quick and just brush it off, right? But I mean, it's also good because there's a whole lot of those out there. It's also good to be able to have arguments that can show that the presupposition is bad to begin with, and
Mm-hmm.
then you
Yeah,
can really get into the other stuff.
yeah. The problem is deception is what I refer to as the precept bunker, like
Oh yeah,
the bunker buster. It's because all you do is you take the opposite spot and you presuppose it, and
right.
then you're forcing it into an epistemological battle, which there is no way to win because it's an unfalsifiable assertion to begin with.
Yeah,
So they can assert all they want that God is good, and you can assert God is evil all you want, and you're just going to be at a standstill and be like, "My precepts, bro. No, my precepts, bro."
well, my thing is, and I take it to the most basic part of it is that you can. use their own book against them, um, and uh, their own book, contradicts their arguments, and you can accept all the things that they're throwing out there, and their book still does it. So even if you're right about the presupposition, you're still wrong about everything else.
Yeah, you're wrong
And
about the evidence that supports your presupposition.
right, right,
Yeah, which is a good point. So this comes down to like divine command theory. Is what is good because God says it? If God was to say today that murder was good, a lot of divine command theorists would say yes. Well, then we're morally obligated to murder each other because
yeah,
he's changing the very fabric of reality by speaking those words to truth, like he did with
mm,
creation.
yeah.
And so there's a verse in Second Thessalonians where he says, "I sent them a delusion so that they will believe the lie."
Ah,
And if you think about it, a divine command theory thing, what by him uttering those words, whatever you come to believe in will be the lie.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. There's no way to deal with that at all.
yeah, he's essentially cut you off from truth in general because of him speaking that into existence in
Yeah,
the
you have
fabric of
no way to
reality.
determine what's true.
So you could sit there and try to like cognitively hold it in your mind, like, well, I believe God is false, but because he said it's a lie, it's a lie. But then if you change your mind and say, well, I believe God is true, that is also a lie because he spoke that into truth. So
Right.
whatever it makes it dependent on what you believe, whether or not the fabric of reality reflects that accurately, which is a fucked off thing to think. It's
Mm,
like it messes with your brain hardcore.
yeah. So we got a $3 super chat from Big Bad Mama saying love and support. Uh, Thank you, Big Bad Mama, for the love. There's some hearts for you. I didn't know they were going to make a beating sound, or I would have turned off the sound.
That's a
Um,
bass subwoofer for
yeah,
headphone users.
yeah, we got deep bass around here. the but thank you, Big Bad Mama. I appreciate it, and love and support to you. Uh, Go check out Big Bad Mama over on his channel. Good stuff. Um, yeah, no, I think you're right, and even if they and I had never really thought about that point, but even if they do try to switch to the divine command theory thing, they've got this contradiction there that makes it impossible for them to know what's true or what's good. And
Mm-hmm.
again, that's another step in there. And I mean, I wouldn't back away from any of these arguments with an apologist. I think I have a good enough grasp on them to because it doesn't take much, right? Like if you know the basics of it, you've got it. Like whenever you get into the deeper details and follow the syllogisms and the logic and all that stuff, I think that you just keep destroying them. But like, I felt confident with these arguments before, and I've made these arguments before, but it's good to talk about them and always refine how you look at that, and it's why having a lot of different perspectives from different creators and different people is so helpful.
Well, and as with all philosophy, there's always a deeper rabbit hole to follow. Like the problem of evil has so many rabbit holes into it that you could spend your life discussing it, debating it, and just looking into like the various nuances and cracks and crevices of it. Um, but even if you know all of it, it still doesn't really amount to anything because philosophy is just kind of like jerking yourself off mentally. It's
Mm.
just it's navel gazing, like armchair philosophy. Like it doesn't have science to it. Philosophy is great for making hypotheses, but you need to put in the work to prove your hypotheses is true. Like we need it for making hypotheses. It's yeah, but until you can actually show that methodology that puts it into the real world using the scientific method, it's not anything worth anything.
Right, right. So whenever you give your definition of evil, and for anybody that's came in, I'll pull it back up on screen here just so we can talk about it. um, Whenever you've used this definition of evil in um, premise two, that which is contrary to God's omnibenevolent nature and will, Um, do you get a lot of pushback immediately on that, or is it later in the argument that they kind of don't like it?
Um, it depends. It's different for each person, but that is the one that it always kind of boils down to.
Yeah,
Um, because, like I said earlier, I bring that definition from the moral argument. You know,
yeah,
because if you give it's not the Euthyphro dilemma. Oh yeah, it is the Euthyphro dilemma. Whether whatever God says is good, or whatever God is following a standard outside of Himself as good.
yeah.
They'll always go with whatever God says is good, but they'll kick the can down the road and they'll say, well, it's not what He says is good; it's what is His nature. And then I'm saying, well, He communicates His nature, right? So therefore, it's what He says is good.
Right, right. Yeah, no,
So
that's good. I
yeah,
like that.
that's where I'm pulling that definition for evil from, is because whatever He says is not good is not good.
Right.
You know, and it just doesn't make sense why a god would have anything in existence that he didn't want to be in the first place. And they'll say free will because he has to have free will, but that goes to what you were saying earlier: is you have two wills at play in this reality drama that they believe is Christianity. They have God's will and you have man's will, and the only way for God to have His will accomplished, the way they think it's going to be accomplished, is if man's will is in harmony with God's will. If it's ever at contradiction, like God has to forcefully interact on their free will to make His will be done. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, no, 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 that fits. The what is the so what I mean, what is the most because I can't really it's hard even though I used to be a creationist or whatever. I can't really take it's hard for me to take that position completely. Like some of the logical stuff they say, like I'm used to it. But what is generally the the most common pushback you get against this?
The hardest time I have arguing this is with Calvinists, is
Right.
because Calvinists will basically erase premise two and say evil doesn't exist. So they'll say everything that is going on in reality is going according to God's will, and that includes the stuff that's horrific, like the Holocaust or kicking puppies or whatever. All of that is going towards a greater good, as you said earlier. Greater good. I hate that fucking shit.
Yeah, greater good.
It's so stupid, but that is what it is, and they will say they're not erasing what evil is, but they don't. At that point, they're erasing what a good, coherent definition of evil is. They don't have a good way to explain what evil is, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. Because if they're using him as the standard, he's going to be the fucking standard. You can't just make him not the standard when you want and make him the standard when you want to. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things I would say about that is that, oh, what was I going to say about that? It was something good and smart. I'm sure it was.
Ah, had to have been. Couldn't have been
Yeah,
anything else.
yeah.
The so I mean, with the Bible being the main source, the primary source for like Christianity, um, do you think that given that if God created evil and evil exists, and once we define, even if we define evil as like that which is harmful, or use some other definition of it, um, whatever definition they make up, I feel like the acts of God in the Bible fall under evil quite often. And so, like you can say, well, do you think killing children is evil? And it's like, oh well, God does that here, here, and here. Um, do you think slavery is evil? Well, God does that here. And uh, so I feel like even if you do that, then you still have the argument of, well, if evil exists and God created evil, God is evil, and God is the evil character throughout the Bible. Um, I
That,
don't.
no, that's a
Yeah,
good point too. And if you put that on the people, like if everything we do, whatever evil we do, actually ends up in a good result, then how can you classify humans as evil?
Right, right.
You know?
And I think that's, and I think apologists try to turn that around on us sometimes, and they'll say, well, if you know, if somebody's telling you that you have to kill 100 people for the greater good, you know, like, then you know, are you still, you know, a humanist and care about man and all that stuff? If you care about the greater good and what's best for humanity, and that's best for humanity, I mean, the whole question is problematic. I get it, but they try to turn that around, and that's actually the problem with their book, right? The thing that they're trying to turn around with you, and they admit by asking that question, is the problem with their book, is that God commits all these evil acts, um,
Yeah.
and they're agreeing that these things are evil by asking the question.
Tux has a good take on this. He likes to classify the Bible itself as the knowledge of good and evil, but yet we have this societal stereotype that it's the good book, and so people who are ending up like believing in the good book, they're just closing their eyes to the evil within the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah,
And so it's a very apt analogy. I think it's a wonderful one that works really well and it translates good.
yeah,
But the problem with having a good God is unless you have the ability to tell he's a good God, you still have to fall back at your own subjective morality to decide if you want to dedicate your life to worship a good God. How did you tell he's a good God? Like,
yeah,
if he is the standard, then obviously whatever he does is going to be good, but you still have to decide whether he's good or not if you're going to devote your life to Christianity, which ultimately goes to show that, you know, my theory of morality and a lot of other people's of subjective morality is the true and real and demonstrable model of morality.
yeah.
Because you have to decide, like, if somebody says, well, what standard of, because standards are just something we apply. Like, what's the correct standard, Joe, of measuring distance? Is it empirical or is it metric?
Oh, it's empirical.
America.
Yeah, America inches.
Yeah, it's the standards. We're subjectively making up those standards too. So
Right.
it falls into this, you know, never-ending hole of chicken and egg with subjective objective nonsense.
Okay. And something else we talked about, divine command theory. So if God is good and everything that God does is good and God created evil, uh, then how do we know what is bad evil, right? Like, it, because that's good evil, but Satan is doing the bad evil. How, you know, what mechanism are we going to use to determine the difference between God's good evil and Satan's bad evil?
And that's touching on what we talked about earlier. It's an infalsifiable concept. The only way for us to know true goodness or true evil would be to be truly good or truly evil ourselves.
Right.
And
But
so,
we wouldn't even know unless God told us, right?
or he could have just made us that way, and he
Yeah.
should have made us that way if that's the argument we're supposed to be having. But
Yeah.
the problem with greater goods is that greater goods also provide the opportunity for greater evils.
Right.
So if anybody wants to use the greater good excuse as a reason why things are the way they are, like a typical example would be like, well, God invited or in he made violence so that people could show bravery. Because without violence, bravery wouldn't be possible. A greater good of bravery, but cowardice would be the greater evil. You know, by having violence invented, and so you're just basically canceling each other out in a mathematical equation. Because how could God make evil for the purpose of possible greater evil as well? It's
Right.
stupid. Like,
Right.
and because there will be people that fall into the cowardice camp. And so those people would have been better off not having violence in the reality we share because they wouldn't have fallen off into a greater evil of cowardice. So it's people don't think about these things. They just promote one side, one side, one side, not realizing that there's another side of the coin. And then they keep saying, oh my goodness, like you're so dumb for not realizing God loves you and he is love and God is good all the time God is good. It's like you're just fucking closing one eye to the fucking reality of the situation, idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if, again, if we give all those things and we accept the Bible and things, and you want to say God is good as in like one of those toxic relationship goods, like because God is constantly the one doing the evil things to man, which are good.
Yeah, it makes
It's
sense, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like that's where you end up, and that's where all these things end up, right? Is you end up in this position to where they have to just say some nonsensical shit, and it's like, okay, we're done here.
Yeah, which is fine and good when it's in a philosophical setting. We're just doing thought experiments. Like, I love them. I think they're fun, but it translates into real world behavior, real world activity. We all know that. Like the majority, like, oh, Hitler wasn't really a Christian or he was a Christian. People argue about that. I don't care.
Yeah,
Like 90% of Germany was Christian at the time. That means all his soldiers were fucking Christians, you idiots. Like, I don't want to
yeah,
debate whether Hitler was a Christian or not. The people carrying out the acts were fucking doing it because they thought God wanted them to.
yeah. A Spooky Bed Hair had a birthday. Happy birthday, Spooky. Missy Maud was looking for you to tell you happy birthday and do that stream. Um, I was. I don't think it was here. I think it was in another chat. She was looking for you though. But happy birthday to you. Here's your present. Holy shit!
My fucking ears.
Yeah. Why did it do that?
Because we
why would stars make that noise?
fucking it was out of an RPG. Make like they shot a rocket propelled grenade.
Well, we're all deaf for your birthday now, Spooky. Thank you.
What?
You're older and we're deaf, so you better grab onto divine command theory real quick. Uh,
So
but
I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of the ground. We've made the connections between the problem deception, problem evil. We've kind of hashed out the different premises of mine. I would be interested in how I could improve the syllogism. If you think I could word it better, or if there's a way to actually make the news tighter on these folks, like I'd appreciate it.
I tell you what, I don't want to because it is so it gets down to where it's like you refine and you're to the best basic form of it you can get. Uh, and so I don't want to just rashly try to insert something, but I'll think about it. I'll look at it and think about it some. And obviously, I've been thinking about this some. That's the post and how we ended up here today. And we had talked about this before, but yeah, I'll look at it and think about it some and see if I can't promise you anything, but I'll probably make it worse.
No, it's good. Like if somebody wants a look at somebody objecting to my thing, Jim Bob actually did a video which I covered him objecting to my video, and I don't think his counter arguments are good. He brought up the greater good stuff. He brought up kind of free will, the stuff that we've already kind of put to bed,
Yeah,
and that it causes a lot more problems than it actually solves.
yeah,
But the main thing I think that you have brought up yourself is like, does God have free will? If He exists, can He go outside His nature? If He can, then is He truly omnibenevolent? Like that is a really big problem.
yeah. Well, I just feel like whenever you get into the to those omnis that you have like if 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 you're all powerful and all knowing, never mind the all loving part, but just those two, like what is there for you to do at that point because you've already set everything in motion to be perfectly the way you wanted it, right? So it's this one act, and I think really that then you get back to okay, well God isn't able to operate in the natural world, but is the one that kicked off all this stuff. Yeah, and then we get back to like an actual cosmological argument to where you need to you need to provide some reason for a creator, some event that demonstrates a creator. You get back into some of those other arguments from Turek and Kenhoven and all those idiots.
Well,
But
and the motivation to act in itself. What we're saying is that creation, God plus creation, is cheesecake plus dirt on it.
I love that.
You know, essentially, like, what would be
Yeah,
the purpose for doing so? Especially in the Trinitarian model, they already have all three to love on each other. Like Muslims, they'll be like, "Oh, he's one God and he needs to love somebody," but that still shows a deficiency in God. He wasn't perfect because absolute perfection would show that there's no need to do anything that you want or need. You
yeah. and some of the arguments, like even some of the stupid arguments about like God is the author of DNA and somebody had to write that code and all that. And it's like, well, given all this stuff, then you get into also the thing of like, so your claim here is that God wrote us this big dramatic play that is just like full of evil and death and everything else, and that was God's plan. Like that, you want to say that's God's plan? I don't want any. I don't. I don't care for the person who wrote that plan. Like that's not. Um,
Yeah, if it's real, right?
yeah,
If it's
yeah. If any of that's true, that's not good. But
because we like theater, if they do a play, but like people aren't really dying. Like that was who's the guy that actually shot somebody? It was that one of the Baldwin brothers did it. He like doing
oh yeah, Alec.
yeah, he was in a show and then he accidentally really shot somebody. But if it's fake shot, cool, we're having entertainment. But if it's real shot, it's like, oh shit. And
Yeah,
that's essentially what they're asking about here in reality. Is like, we're doing a play, but everything's fucking real. Like we
yeah,
feel all the pain, we feel all the sorrow. It's not just dramatic for dramatic's sake, and we're enjoying ourselves. No, we're actually suffering because of this guy who wrote a play. And if he wrote a
mm.
play, how is that not determinism? How many
Right.
producers
Yeah,
or directors are going to be like, oh, it's okay to go off script, maybe a little bit. Like that's your free will, is ad libbing on some lines. But if you decide to take the story a completely different way than he is as an actor and he's the director, he's going to be fucking pissed. He's not actually directing at that point. He's lost his job. You're the director. Free
yeah.
will makes you the director.
Well, right. And even if it's even with just the simple statement that it's part of God's plan, it's like, well, if it's part of God's plan, then it's determined. There's no you've already you can't argue that as why it's that way, because you're taking away free will with that. I mean, everything in the Bible takes away free will, though.
Yeah. Well, free
But
will, as I understand it, is the opportunity, the ability to do something different.
right,
You know, and so unless they're willing to concede that we as humanity, sinful humanity, could win in a game of wits against God, which they won't,
yeah.
then we don't truly have free will.
Right. Well, the thing that I've discussed with one of my friends, Will, is it's like I had the opportunity to go in the kitchen and eat either pizza or hamburgers, and I ate hamburgers. Is it possible that I could have chosen to eat pizza? And then you get into, because then the question is, well, if God knew that I was going to choose to eat the pizza, then it's not possible that I was going to eat hamburgers, because it's part of God's plan that I ate the pizza. Even down
Well,
to little simple things like that.
that's challenging his omniscience because you
Yeah,
would be proving God doesn't know everything.
right.
And it was written before you were born, so it's not like a chain of events leads up to the point where you can actually do something that he wouldn't know of because he already
Yeah,
knew it.
yeah,
It's a big clusterfuck.
yeah. No, definitely. Well, all right. It's almost 6 o'clock, and I'm sure somebody's going to start a stream at 6 o'clock, and I kind of jumped in the middle of the day here, so we'll wrap this thing up. But I mean, awesome. I think we did a really good job covering a lot of the different aspects of the problem of evil, how it relates to some of those other fundamental problems with fundamentally logical problems with the Bible and the claims of apologists and Christians. Um, and it's one of those things too that whenever we have these discussions, that they really have no answer to. So or they have answers that just are so absurd they don't work, like we got into earlier.
Yeah.
Um, and so I hope any of you out there that engage in these conversations in chat or elsewhere, wherever it is, or talking to your family or whoever it is, that you can maybe some part of this will ring a bell in your head when you have those conversations, and you'll be able to use it. Because although I wasn't fond of the problem of evil, just because I don't make the argument that well, um, I'm learning too, and so I feel now after this conversation better equipped to engage in that argument myself, which is what it's all about, guys.
Yeah, true that.
Um, but BS Lewis, what you got going on? Tell everybody your stuff. You're pinned in the chat already, so the link's there.
Yeah, if anybody wants to see me repeatedly dunk on CS Loose finally after 4 years, then I just have a video that came out yesterday that I'm pretty proud of, and you should go watch it. It's fun.
Awesome. Yeah, I've already watched it. I didn't think I had, but I did, or it may have played while I was asleep or something. It says I watched it though, so I guess I did or didn't, but I'll look at it again. Um, but actually, the pin in the chat will take you straight to that video. So go over there and check it out, and everybody like it and subscribe while you're over there. BS Lewis makes good content. You're gonna go watch that video, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, I gotta watch the rest of these videos." And I suggest that you do that because it's
Appreciate it.
awesome. Yeah. Um, so just to wrap up on my end. I am working on a couple streams this week. I'm not sure. I've got some things up in the air, even with that Muslim dude. Uh, um, and actually, part of what we talked about, I'm going to use if I talk to that person. But the I don't know what I'm doing for sure, but I do know that the Ark Encounter is July 6th in Williamstown, Kentucky, and that you can find all the information you need for that at arkencounterprotest.com. And if you need to ask me any questions or whatever, you can get a hold of me at the Kentucky Atheist at Gmail, and I'll be more than happy to answer you as quick as possible. Um, all of my links to all of my social media and stuff are all in the description below. And thank you for subscribing, you guys in chat and anybody watching. Thanks for coming and watching. If you don't care, hit the like and subscribe buttons. That really helps me out. I said all the things. Um, the I'm going to be doing some streaming on TikTok here soon. So all of you guys go catch me on on TikTok too. The Kentucky Atheist, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. I'm the Kentucky Atheist. Thanks for coming and watching, and you know, don't don't fall into the problem of evil traps.
Later, Gators.
Later.